All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
I'm surprised, honestly, that you're here after yesterday. Yeah, and thank you. I am greeted, as I always am, by the warm embrace of a recorded audience. And I must tell you that Albert is here today. And
Albert, thank you.
If I needed any more, I don't know. I have to put this thing up under my shirt, and sometimes I forget to put a button on. Kim is here also, and Kim has been wonderful.
Kim, how are you?
She's scurried, as we all have, to get you some video and get you some interview clips that I think make a kind of dark case for the next election. But there is also pushback, and we have some pretty good clips of those involved in the election process who will provide that pushback, potentially anyway. Today, speaking of elections, can't believe that we are lucky enough to speak to this guy. It just happened to this booking came up right in the sweet spot of the conversation around elections. The brilliant Greg Palast joins us, investigative journalist, statistician. He will take us through a lot of the numbers and a lot of the voter suppression plans that the GOP has for the midterms and beyond. And also will give you a bit of Steve Bannon's thoughts from his podcast. He's a scary cat, man. Steve Bannon is a scary guy. But you know what you hear in Steve Bannon and see in Steve Bannon? And this is something that I've tried to impress upon those who will listen. You hear that they're in a fight for the soul of America. You understand? They're in a crusade. It's a religious crusade in large measure. I think even Bannon's verbiage is underpinned by a lot of that. He uses a lot of kind of battlefield jargon, and he uses a lot of religious reference. And so you kind of, in that, you get how they feel it's, in a way, their jihad. And the reason I think that's important is their North Star isn't, the people's voice needs to be answered to. The people's voice needs to be heard. The system has to respect the people's voice. That's not what they're saying. There is some of, they're not going to steal the election again. There's sort of like that, like there was, we'll know a good election when we see one type thing. But what they're really saying is, we need to do whatever we have to do. And you'll hear them in just a minute or two. We need to do whatever we have to do to take this election and take this system to make sure that those people, the liberals, the Marxists, the communists, etc., that they don't take hold of the system. And when you hear that, you realize that it is a jihad. It is a holy war for them. And that is scary. So, because in that, you realize there's an imperative that they feel that undermines all legislative imperatives, all imperatives associated with equal voices, and they'll use whatever excuse they have to. You know, illegals voted in the last one. It was all manipulated. Look what they're doing in California, counting the votes late, whatever it is. They create their own BS. But the fervor, the zeal that is represented by their rhetoric exposes that they'll do anything to remain in power. So I'll get to some of that in a minute. Albert, I'm glad you were not here yesterday. And I say that only because it was ugly. It was ugly, Albert.
What?
I know.
I blame you.
We had a conservative, sorry, I feel a sneeze coming up. Excuse me. We had a conservative economist on, and we had to edit it because when I try to interrupt him and stuff, it was one of those delays, like almost felt like a satellite delay. And so we had to edit out all that. So I just let him run, right? Because once you realize you can't really, do a back and forth, and people got on me for letting him run. Now, I think I was anxious to hear what he had to say, because I think this economy and the economy as represented by a blueprint out of the Trump administration, the whole plan is indefensible. I don't see how but he, of course, does defend it. But man, Albert, they took me to took me to task. What can I tell you? My own audience, they turned on me like rabid animals, Albert. Yeah.
What?
I know.
John Watson says he wasn't conservative. He was MAGA.
No, he wasn't MAGA. He was. I mean, he might have been MAGA adjacent, but he wasn't. You heard him dump on Trump. How can you? Although I had to drag him to the dump on Trump. But let me give you the worst. So what I was saying is, I don't know. I want to hear how a guy who is a smart guy, totally anti-Obama, anti-liberal, anti-Democrats. I get it. But I wanted to hear how he would defend this economy. And he went after tariffs, and I thought I held his feet to the fire a little bit on that. Again, my manner is very genial, and so perhaps that doesn't, that's not what people want. I mean, clearly it's not. So, but I would say that he didn't really defend the tariffs. He ultimately didn't defend Trump on tariff policy, on when we return to tariff policy, on the encumbrance that tariff policy is around the economy. He was, I don't think he was a backer of Trump at all. When I talked about the corruption, he first said, well, I think the optics of taking, you would have loved it, Albert. He said, I think the optics of taking that money is poor. I said, the optics? You're just concerned with the optics? I mean, he's corrupt is the problem. But I think I didn't savage him probably the way people would have liked. And so when I said I wanted to hear from a right-wing economist, I got this. And this is a kind of, I think, a representative.
I've received a lot of positive letters.
Mark, don't insult our intelligence. Do you really think we are not aware of what the, quote, other side thinks? Please do not waste our time and the show time. I really feel offended. Well, maybe I was unclear. Maybe you know what the other side is thinking. I know what the other side is thinking in general, but I wanted to hear this MAGA-adjacent economist defend this policy and this blueprint and this strategy. And after hearing it, I realized, he's made up a bunch of stuff around subsidies for oil companies. He was, of course, dumping on the subsidies associated with alternative energy. And I even said, but fossil fuel companies have been getting subsidies for decades now. I don't understand all of it. But again, I think all of it was lost in the miasma of anger and resentment that we even had him on. And so I learned a lesson. I mean, I think I lost a bunch of supporters that way. You who are still with us, man, it's pretty wild. One and done, right? I didn't think it was that bad, but in any case, I take if you can't handle a civilized interview with a conservative, get out of the house and meet actual people. Yeah, thank you, Colleen Cab Franc. I do think that we talk about this, the echo chamber. I think we can get into our own echo chamber. I get it. I want to watch Midas Touch, and I want to watch Mehdi Hassan, and blah, blah, blah. Okay, great. I'm with you. But as I've said, I'm not going to blow hopium every day on this show. I want to hear what's really going on from some of the smartest people we know. We bring on great guests. And then when I bring in a conservative voice, I want to hear where they're coming from. I'm not trying to promulgate their position. I'm just hearing and getting a window on what they're thinking. And I think from that standpoint, it was educational.
Dinging you for promulgate. Absolutely.
Yeah, but I would say that maybe it's my education, Bonnie. I mean, clearly from Bonnie's email, she already. I don't insult my intelligence. Okay, I guess you know all of this. So sorry about that. So Bonnie knows everything, but
12 from the Bay says, if we expect the other side to listen to us, then we must listen to them. Even if it's painful. Otherwise, no one learns anything.
And I think people also responded to the fact that I was so decent or flattering toward him. I don't know. No one said that, but I think that probably bothered you. That there are guests in my house, and so I treat them like guests in my house. And that's, if it had been the radio, it would have been a little different, but I still really want to hear what they had to say. Radio has a different dimension, and there's a certain premium on that back and forth. But anyway, that was the story on that. Albert, I'm glad you missed it. It was
I think with the radio connection too, there wouldn't be that weird. Everybody understands, even during COVID, that weird Zoom delay or even our connectivity delay. So it's you're in a tough spot.
Yeah. Thank you, Albert.
Albert, thank you.
Yes, I appreciate that. All right. Well, into it. Law supporters, really, that is silly. Not all guests are going to be loved. It's not like they are on every single day. Geez, yeah, I agree, Delette. I was really surprised by it. You know, it almost made me feel like, wow, maybe what they say about snowflakes is true. I can't, you know, I always think the right is they're the snowflakes. The left is far more durable in terms of what we can endure. And again, even when I say the left, I know there's a whole breadth of left. Like I'm not nearly as far left as you'll find across the universe of YouTube and Substack, but I'm certainly way left of the guy we had on yesterday. You know, I believe that alternative energy and solar and wind, they have to be the centerpiece of the future. They're not just some add-on, right? But again, I was curious when it came to the economy and those things, and he dumped on Biden a bit. Maybe that offended people, but I wasn't particularly triggered. But again, the audience most clearly was. So anyway, thank you for being here. We got a lot today. You're going to love every bit of it, regardless of where you sit. Beth knows it all because she was insulted that I would even suggest that she doesn't know anything about. But apart from Beth, I think I'm looking forward to learning some things from Greg Palast, who knows. Thank you, Vivian Alshawa, who is an OG of the show. Big shout out. $10 super sticker. And let me say this about myself. Take that down for just a second, and I'll get to it. Maybe to be fair to you all, and even to Beth, who wrote me, I'm sensitive. You know, I'm sensitive to all of the, Kim will tell you this, I'm like super critical of myself. I will go, I could have handled this better, I could have handled that better, everything I do that with. And to a fault, it's not always a good thing. But when you guys come at me, I go, let's see, was that a reasonable, maybe that person is right. That so I do listen to what you say and try to integrate what you say in some way if I think it has merit. And so I think that, I try to respond to that as well, and maybe I'm responding to it too much. So with that, we continue. Now, quick super chat as well.
Your comments.
Well, not all of them. They can't outright cancel elections, says Sean. So having ICE show up and point guns at whoever they guess are the liberals is the likely play. Hard to get a court order telling secret police not to secret police. Well, the ICE move and the ICE flex, and the ICE guys are just thugs, right? They're goons. Having the thugs show up at polling places is clearly an effort to suppress the vote. That's why I want to talk to Greg Palast, who's like, he's suppressed the vote ninja. He knows all the different ways that the vote is suppressed. Yes, I'm very unhappy with everything I heard on your show yesterday.
Big shout out.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. Where is my my darling Shirley from the radio?
Yes, I'm very unhappy with everything I've heard today on your show.
There you go. All right. I do like that you ruffled the covers, says Jim Slayton. Thank you so much, Jim. Thanks for the shout out, and thanks for hello, everyone. Chaplain Fred says it was not about a battle. It was more of a potential compromise and or education. Right, Mark? I think it was a It was a it was showing what the conservatives are still supporting. I think so too. I think it was a window on them. So yeah, thank you for seeing it in that context, and thank you for the super chat always. Funny, I'm 68 and not one thing hurts. I attribute that to drugs and alcohol, says Richard Dillman. All right, let's get on with some of
The Mark Thompson Show.
Smash the like button for me, if you will, or when you get around to it in a second. So banning the election outright would never be the plan. As I've talked about before, you find in even the most despotic regimes, you find a vote. The question is reliability of the vote, manipulation of the vote, and how the vote goes down. So when it comes to elections, clearly in the focus is the polling places, and I'd say the vote count. For the polling places, give me a little Steve Bannon. This is Bannon off of his show, and listen to the verbiage he uses. When we talk about Bannon, I think you have to realize that he's on a jihad. Go ahead, Albert.
Thing the deep state can control into the White House is enfeebled. That's not happening again. And yes, you're going to have ICE people around the ballot box. I don't care if Bill Kristol and these guys, all these weak-kneed Republicans that got us in all these foreign wars and destroyed the country and now are just sycophants for the Democrats and anti-Trump. So listen, I would love to sit there and go, Tom Homan, that's amazing. I feel it, the unprecedented cooperation. Let's just draw down 700 in Minnesota. No. Make the mathematical case of what the unprecedented cooperation is, and maybe it is. Maybe we're just missing it. Maybe the state prisons and the jails and Fry and Waltz are just bending over backwards to cooperate, and maybe we're getting to the bad hombres and we're picking them up. Haven't seen it on tape. They don't talk about it on MSNBC. Maybe that's it. Unless if we make that case, you say, hey, let's redeploy those assets someplace else. But until that time, you should surge again. This is not about politics in the midterms. Let me repeat, we have a moral obligation to drive every illegal alien invader out of this nation. I don't give a damn what Wall Street says about it. I don't care what corporate America says about it. I don't care what the tech bros say about it. And I certainly don't care what Rachel Maddow and the Marxist media that defended this and lied about it when it was happening. You think now we're supposed to kowtow to? So here's the unprecedented cooperation. We're going to give them none, zero. All of them got to go, and President Trump has to nationalize the election. You got to put not just, I think, ICE. You got to call up the 82nd and the 101st Airborne on the Insurrection Act. You got to get around every poll and make sure only people with IDs, people are actually registered to vote, and people that are United States citizens vote in this election. Full stop. We will not accept anything less.
So I really wanted you to hear that entire thing because you're hearing a smaller soundbite from Bannon, typically in mainstream media and maybe in other places, even here on this platform. I wanted you to hear the whole thing because you can see he's ready to bring, all the king's horses and all the king's men. Right?
He wants ICE at the voting polls.
He wants the military at the voting polls. He wants the ICE agents at the voting stations and polls. He wants to do all he can to retain power and deny the voice of the left or anyone who's a Democrat for that matter. I wanted you to hear the jihadism. I wanted you to hear the fervor, the religious zeal with which he pursues this crap. It's scary. It's the plan and even the oratory of authoritarianism. Steve Bannon, by the way, has talked about running for president. Now you can see how he'll have the strength of that coalition, but I'm talking about that coalition of the religious right and also the MAGA right. I mean, the MAGA right that is so solid. I'm talking about Proud Boys, white nationalists, these kinds of guys. The super core of MAGA. That's reflected in Steve Bannon. But Steve Bannon doesn't have the kind of broad appeal that you need to win any kind of reasonable election, any kind of fair election. But I'm just saying this is the fervor with which he pursues that which he puts out there. So Bannon's willing to destroy the country economically in the name of white Christian nationalism, says Randy. I think that's true. He's willing to destroy the system. And again, when you talk about the country is, I think, from a cornerstone standpoint, reflective of the people's voice represented in free and fair elections. I mean, again, the suffragette movement, the granting of the vote to blacks in America. I mean, these are all things that have evolved through the years to give us closer to a free and fair election than we've had in the past. So the fact that you, again, have an election is just a bit of theater if people don't really have a shot at having their voice reflected in that election. But I think it's true that that system that I'm describing, it is America. That goal, that ideal is America. And it's true also that Bannon clearly would like to see it undermined completely. So don't tell me you're a patriot while you undermine the people's voice. It's outrageous. Bannon and Miller are the scariest people in our country right now. Scarier than Donnie. Yes, scarier than Donnie. Well, scarier than Donnie because they come right at you nakedly. So get to Greg Palast in a moment. He is going to join us in just a few moments. And he's, when it comes to the vote, I think he's just, he's without peer. And along the way here, I'll play you from many states that are now having to do a back and forth with the Justice Department, the heroic acts to protect voter information. The Justice Department wants all voter information from more and more states. And I'll give you a little sense of that from those states in just a few moments. So this is the state of things. I mean, it really is something of a battle. And so we'll get to that. I also have Trump in an interview. There's a lot to get to today, and we'll get to as much as we possibly can.
Thompson Show.
I did want to mention our newest sponsor is Suite 106 Bakery, SUITE, like a suite of rooms if you're just listening and not watching. Oh, I received my peanut butter brownies yesterday, and it's going to take days to eat one. That's the thing. Thank you, Sausalito Vicky. It's not like your average brownie. I mean, it is the kind of thing that you eat some of and then you put it away and you eat. The brownies from Suite 106 are like half a pound each, says Sausalito Vicky. Yeah, the offerings here are extraordinary. I'm so proud that they would find us and become our partner. Suite106bakery.com. Use our discount code MarkT. You'll get 15% off. The brownies and cookies are just part of it. Look at that. That I could crawl inside that delicious offering. That's a layered cupcake is what that is. And it comes in this thing. It looks like a, what is that, Albert, that it comes in? It comes in that like it's a pint size.
Like a pint size, like a Ben & Jerry's size pint of ice cream.
Yeah, thank you.
Which is great.
So you take like a couple of spoonfuls and it's just like, oh my God, it just lights up your day. Then you put it back in the fridge, or you know what I mean? And then you go back in there after midnight. But I'm telling you, I could crawl inside those gorgeous Ben & Jerry's style. I don't know what you call them, those pint.
Yeah, I was eating the Snickers. I told my girlfriend that I don't know if there's enough for the two of us. You know?
What?
I caught myself sneaking bites behind her back. So
it's that delicious, everyone.
Oh my God, it's so good.
That is that delicious. For Valentine's Day, you can still order, and they'll get it to you if you'll order in the next day or two. Suite106bakery.com. Use our discount code MarkT for 15% off. I promise you, it will light up your life. It is so delicious. And they are, as I said, small batches that are baked to order. So when you order it, they bake it for you. They package it and send it out. And so it maintains freshness. They won Cupcake Wars twice, and she is a wonderful shining light monument to female entrepreneurism. I love what she's done. And it's a family business, too. Just
did
great.
I tell you my son is turning 12 in a couple of weeks, and he's decided that he wants me to buy a cupcake cake in the pint for everyone in class. That would be 30 students in class. I'm like, listen, I don't think I can pull that off, but they have cake mixes on the website. And so the chance exists that I could buy one of the cake mixes.
Oh, yeah, do your own.
Recreate kind of what she has here, but they have cake mixes on there as well. So if you wanted to do cupcakes, you could with her special batters and mixes there. So there's a lot to check out on the website. But yeah, that Snickers cupcake cake, hands down, one of the best things I've ever had in my life.
Sweet106bakery.com. Use the discount code MARKT for 15% off.
I've told you it's never easy being in this business.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I am truly so taken by the work of Greg Palast. I mean, if you see his movie, the documentary that is available, I believe, he'll tell us. I think it's available now on YouTube. It really speaks to the high art that voter suppression has taken in places like Georgia. It was just some of these southern states that have been practicing it for so long. But I think Greg now points to other places in which the election is so very vulnerable. He's a brilliant investigative journalist, as you know. He's written for The Guardian, as I say. His investigative work across the board has been lauded, BBC as well. And and again, we'll have a link to the documentary after this interview. But I think that he has a screening of Vigilantes Inc., which is the movie. I think he's doing that this week. But again, I'll ask him. How about it for Greg Palast? Look at you. Nice to see you, sir. I need to hear. Can you unmute for us, please? I know. You got to unmute. All right. But
I see.
There you go.
Oh,
yeah, there you are.
Okay.
Greg Palast.
Turning off the mute button.
You look all wintry. I love it. I love your winter look.
I'm in Chicago, man.
Yeah.
Right now, and because tonight I'm going to be showing the latest version of my film Vigilantes Inc., America's New Vote Suppression Hitman. If you're in the Chicagoland area, please join me at the Unitarian Church in Hinsdale, Walnut, at 6:30 p.m. And I will be showing Vigilantes Inc. In coordination with Indivisible. It will also be online. So go to gregpalast.com. If you're not in the Chicagoland area, you can watch Vigilantes Inc. online. Or through Mobilize Us at Indivisible. Just go to gregpalast.com.
Yeah, we'll have a link, by the way. gregpalast.com will be under this video. So you just click the link.
I see
and I mean, for those who haven't seen it, I think most of my audience has seen it, but Vigilantes Inc., America's New Vote Suppression Hitmen, narrated by Rosario Dawson. It was produced by Martin Sheen. I think Leo DiCaprio had something to do with it too. I mean,
he's my exec producer.
Yeah. So I'm so impressed by that film. You reveal a lot. There are a couple of moments where like, wow, like I don't even know how this moment, you lead up to these moments so beautifully in the movie. But I wonder if you can give us an overview. There it is, Vigilantes Inc., America's New Vote Suppression Hitmen. I was talking before about Steve Bannon, and I showed a clip from Steve Bannon's show. He really is, to use the oft-used phrase, doubling down on the idea that there should be ICE, and even he was saying military protecting the polls, and no one should be voting in this election who's not an American. They've created a complete fiction, Greg, which is that somehow those who aren't in the country legally are voting and influencing elections. There's no evidence of that at all.
Well, in fact, there's evidence just the opposite. Let me tell you something. In with this whole game that they're saying illegal aliens are voting. Well, if you're not an American, you shouldn't vote in our elections. But we did this once before. They're talking about using something called the SAVE Act or the save files. Now, what are they? They're the list of people who've been deported. Here's how the game works. This is why, Mark, they wanted those ballots from Georgia. It had nothing to do with the 2020 election. Don't get fooled by the mainstream media. It's not about, as Mark Elias and every one of my people out in Georgia are saying, this is about 26 and 28, not 2020. What they want to do is run the database of people who've been deported against the voter files. And now, okay, if that was a good way to find people who are illegally voting, I have no problem. You find an alien, put them in prison if they're voting. So the Obama administration was forced to give these files, these deportation files, to the state of Florida back in 2012. They removed 180,000 voters. Now, were there 180,000 alien voters? I mean, that would be a lot of spaceships coming down with aliens. No. Okay, so what they did was, when you have lists of deportees, believe it or not, there's names like Jose Garcia, Linda Rodriguez, you name it, if it's basically Hispanic names. And then they compare it to the voter files. And believe it or not, they found a Jose Garcia voting in Florida. They found a Linda Rodriguez voting in Florida. They removed their names. They removed 180,000 people from the voter rolls. That's how Florida went from voting twice for Obama to Trump. They removed 180,000 people.
Just because the names matched.
Now, here's the thing.
Yeah.
They did find. So, remember, it's a felony crime to vote if you're an alien. So here they have this giant list of 180,000. They must have filled the jails with aliens. But nope, they could only find, out of the 180,000 people who lost their vote, only one was charged with voting as an alien. And by the way, it happened to be an Austrian Republican. But one out of 180,000, but all these 180,000 people, almost all of them lost their vote. They said, oh, big deal. You can always get your vote back. You know what you had to do? You had to go to a federal court, prove you are who you are, and you're an American citizen. That's taking days out of your out of work and going through hell just to get the vote. If you're Hispanic, have a Hispanic last name.
Well, they're just making it harder and harder to vote. They're doing more and more to suppress your voice.
And so they're playing these games. So they want ICE involved for two reasons. One, they want to use the SAVE database everywhere, from all the swing states, Georgia, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Arizona, Nevada. They want to use, imagine, Nevada and Arizona are majority Hispanic states. If you give them a list of names like Jose Garcia, you're going to lose thousands of thousands. You're going to lose hundreds of thousands of voters.
Sure,
whose only crime is voting while brown.
Yeah,
and
just because their name is Garcia or Gomez or whatever it is. Yeah.
So that's the game. And then plus you have these RoboCops, these ICE guys in front of the voting stations. And remember, they want to require you to have proof of citizenship. So you imagine these ICE guys coming up to you while you're in line to vote, saying, "Where's your proof of citizenship?" And you're afraid, if you don't have it with you, that you could be arrested on the spot.
Because they are detaining and even executing American citizens. Play for Palast, if you will, Albert. Just the ban, and this is about 90 seconds. But I was speaking about the sort of religious zeal with which you find these guys going after this plan, Greg. I mean, it's pretty scary. Here's Steve Bannon from his show talking about how he wants ICE at the polling places. He wants the military on the streets. His view is double down on Minnesota. He wants to lean in hard. And this is a guy who is he's a tastemaker. He's definitely a villain. But on the right, he's in the leadership of thinking on the right, on the extreme right. I'll grant you. But here you go. Here's a little bit of Bannon.
Debt out of control. The railhead all goes back to the chaos makers of the stolen election and putting in Biden, a controlled, something the deep state can control, into the White House is enfeebled. That's not happening again. And yes, you're going to have ICE people around the ballot box. I don't care if Bill Kristol and these guys, all these weak-kneed Republicans that got us in all these foreign wars and destroyed the country and now are just sycophants for the Democrats and anti-Trump. So listen, I would love to sit there and go, Tom Homan, that's amazing. I feel it, the unprecedented cooperation. Let's just draw down 700 in Minnesota. No. Make the mathematical case of what the unprecedented cooperation is, and maybe it is. Maybe we're just missing it. Maybe the state prisons and the jails and Fry and Waltz are just bending over backwards to cooperate, and maybe we're getting to the bad hombres and we're picking them up. Haven't seen it on tape. They don't talk about it on MSNBC. Maybe that's it. And if we make that case, you say, hey, let's redeploy those assets someplace else. But until that time, you should surge again. This is not about politics.
So I've heard enough, but you can see that's the Minnesota part, the surge again. But you can see, Greg Palast, how he wants to deploy, to use his word, all of these troops in all of these polling places.
Well, we've seen that's the other thing I'm worried about besides the intimidation factor. Remember that in 1964, and you'll see this in my film Vigilantes, we had Eagle Eye, in which you had roving groups of vigilantes challenging Hispanic voters in Arizona and many other states. And it's back. You'll see in my film also a group which has 50 flying squads of protectors, because you'll see it's not just ICE. It's all these right-wing militia nuts who show up and literally surround the polling station drop boxes, and they stand there with automatic weapons, because places like Arizona are open carry. They have automatic weapons. They're completely covered, masks and everything. They're like ICE, except that they're fakes. And if you're a Hispanic voter, you pull up to a drop box to drop off your vote, and your kids are in the car and you see these guys with guns, are you going to go in there? And if you do, they say, where's your proof of citizenship? Well, here's the problem. They can't find the aliens. We don't need people to prove their citizenship. And remember, citizenship, the reason they want to nationalize the elections and require you to prove citizenship, only 30%, only 1 in 3 black people have a passport. How do you prove your citizenship? Here's your proof of citizenship. Passport, original birth certificate, naturalization papers. That's it. So, and when I say, notice I didn't say birth certificate. I said original birth certificate. Do you know where it is? Do you know where your mom put it? The other thing is 67 million women have changed their last name to their husband. 67 million American women. Now, how do they vote and prove their citizenship? They have to have an original birth certificate plus a marriage certificate showing that they've changed their name. The other thing is, again, the passports. Only 50% of Americans have passports. Like I say, and only 30% of black Americans. They know what they're doing. Who has passports? People that go skiing in the Alps. But so they understand exactly what they're doing when they say, prove your citizenship. No, you prove to me that they're illegal aliens. They've said, the Heritage Foundation says that there are 6 million illegal aliens voting in our elections. And I've asked Heritage, I've asked these guys making these claims, the Trumpsters making this claim, so don't give me 6 million names. Give me the names of 6. Because after all, if you say that they're illegally registered, give me their names. And by the way, I'll go and arrest them. Citizens arrest. I don't want an illegal alien voting in our elections, but they don't. They couldn't provide 6 million. They couldn't provide 6.
Well, Greg Palast, and I've said this before, that if you're here illegally in the United States, you're trying to stay sub rosa. You're trying to stay underground. You're not looking to show up in a polling place or even deal with any kind of official authority. And it's
out of your mind to say, here I am, and here's
my. Why to influence the vote for the Democrats? Please, to call it tortured logic is not even strong enough. A play for Greg, the nationalization cuts from Trump, though. So Trump now talking about nationalizing the vote, called into Dan Bongino's show, and Bongino, of course, the former number 2 at the FBI. First as a podcaster, then he's number 2 at the FBI. Then he bails on that. Now he's back to his podcast, and Trump called in. Go ahead.
15 places, the Republicans ought to nationalize the voting. Under the
Yeah, what I really want, but then play the Oval, if you will, the gaggle meeting there, Albert, if you would, where he's speaking to the press. Here you go.
Said that you should nationalize elections. And which 15 states are you talking about?
I want to see elections be honest. And if a state can't run an election, I think the people behind me should do something about it. Because, if you think about it, a state is an agent for the federal government in elections. I don't know why the federal government doesn't do them anyway. But when you see some of these states about how horribly they run their elections, what a disgrace it is, I think the federal government, when you see crooked elections, and we had plenty of them, and by the way, we had them last time, but go to 2020 and look at the facts that are coming out. Rigged, crooked elections. If we have areas, take a look at Detroit, take a look at Pennsylvania, take a look at Philadelphia. You go take a look at Atlanta, look at some of the places that horrible corruption on elections. And the federal government should not allow that. The federal government should get involved. These are agents of the federal government to count the votes. If they can't count the votes legally and honestly, then somebody else should take over.
Yeah, then we'll count them, I guess. Okay, is what he's saying. So, Greg, you can see the other fiction. This is a distinctly different fiction than the first that you were talking about.
Well, it's actually all related.
Well, of course it's related. But anyway, go ahead. Yeah.
But here's the thing. Now, my film, Vigilantes, Inc., they just did this raid on Fulton County Elections Office. The film Vigilantes, Inc., half of it takes place in Fulton County. For those who don't know, Fulton County is the heart of Blacklanta. It's Atlanta. He was talking about the illegal voting in Atlanta. Because of Georgia and Fulton County, because you had in 2020, and you had a massive, massive turnout of Black voters in Atlanta, that is Fulton County, the core of Fulton County. And they used one of the things that disturbs him, the reason they seized 700 boxes of ballots, it is the claim of the Trumpsters and Donald Trump personally that the ballot drop boxes were stuffed by Black men in Atlanta, Philadelphia, and Milwaukee, and a few other places, but mainly in Fulton County, which, of course, Trump lost by 11,000 votes in Georgia. He lost by 70,000 votes in Fulton. And here's the thing about Fulton. They have to stop people from voting in Fulton. That is, and none of the mainstream media, by the way, says the obvious. They have to stop Black voters. They have to. Fulton County is Black. Okay, they're trying to stop Black voters. And one of the main ways that Black people vote, Black folks 70% vote early. That is, they go in person for the early voting, or they mail in their ballot. But in places like Georgia and Arizona and Milwaukee, Black people use ballot drop boxes because they reasonably don't trust the post office. They don't want to wait 4-5 hours in line. I was in Dayton where there was a 5-hour wait in line at the Black polling station, and there was zero wait at the suburban polling station, Toledo, where they gave you coffee and cookies if you showed up.
And you're not allowed now to provide water to those who are
in Georgia. If you're in the white suburbs of Toledo, you get coffee and cookies.
Right,
but you don't have to wait in line.
But Greg, just because you mentioned it, the Dropbox play is such a devious, dastardly, underhanded thing, because they've reduced immensely the number of those drop boxes that you're talking about.
Yes, in fact, I'm the only one that reported. And I now write a lot. By the way, weekly column for Raw Story and the Tom Hartman Report, and I'm a statistician by training and an economist. So I looked at the statistics under SB 202, which is this Jim Crow law in Georgia. They reduced the number of drop boxes in Atlanta and Savannah, the two Black cities. They reduced them by 75%. One drop box for 100,000 voters. But in the white counties, they actually increased the number of ballot drop boxes. And their claim, Trump's claim, which has been very effective, 30 states have either eliminated or substantially reduced access to drop boxes because they know that's how Black people vote. And in Georgia, they claimed, and Trump has claimed, that there's all these black men stuffing the ballot boxes. And I want to emphasize that they say it's black men. And there's a film, 2,000 Mules, that they claim 2,000 black men have been paid to stuff ballot drop boxes. And they concentrate on Fulton. Now, they say that Mark Zuckerberg is paying the $10 for each stuffed ballot, which is kind of odd because he's a Republican. And George Soros. So they're mixing their racism with their anti-Semitism. And, it's a really good combination for the rubes. And
play for Palast. If sorry to interrupt, but I just want to get some of these cuts in. Play for Palast the pushback. The Brennan Center, I think, speaks to some of the demands on the state now, more than just Georgia, to turn over these voter rolls. Yes. This is pretty extraordinary. Just a little bit here, you'll get a sense of it. Go ahead, Albert.
Now, the Trump administration has been demanding that nearly every state hand over confidential, unredacted voter data. I'm talking about full copies of statewide voter registration lists, including driver's license numbers and social security numbers. And if the states don't comply, the Justice Department has been suing them. This is unprecedented. The federal government has no business sweeping up the voter files of every state. Under the Constitution, running elections is a responsibility that belongs to the states. States are responsible for registering eligible voters and removing voters who become ineligible. They have the authority and the expertise to do this. The federal government does not.
So I do want to say, Greg, this is a new front, or an expanded front, might be another way to put it. And so states are now suing the federal government to prevent this stuff from being released. I wonder if you could speak to this, because this is part of controlling the outcome of the midterms.
Yes, but I don't care that the feds want to move in on the states. It's what they're doing with that information. Again, they're taking the voter rolls, comparing them to deportees. There goes literally hundreds of thousands of Hispanic name voters. We saw it in Florida, 180,000 removed. None of those Hispanic voters was a non-citizen, not one. Then they want to prove that black people are stuffing ballots in those ballot boxes multiple times. This, by the way, is an old Ku Klux Klan claim from the film Birth of a Nation, that black people, and they call them, the film is called 2,000 Mules, naming black people as mules, like that. Again, launched by Trump at Mar-a-Lago. Now, in my film, Vigilantes, I take apart their film, 2,000 Mules, key frames. Now, one of the things that they do, for example, they keep saying, well, we've got the proof because we're looking at voters, because every Dropbox, by the way, has a video camera on it. So they're taking the video camera tapes and showing black men stuffing the ballot boxes. What you're seeing is black men voting. And they show one guy. Again, they keep showing the same guy again and again, like 3 times during the film. A guy runs out of his very nice car, like a BMW, runs to the ballot drop box. It's middle night, and he sticks a couple ballots in, drops one, puts one back in, and Charlie and what they're telling us is that, and in this film they have Charlie Kirk, remember that guy, and the guy from Prager Institute, and they're saying that we're witnessing O.J. Simpson leaving the scene of the crime. When we're looking at the official videotape of a voter who's black putting in a couple ballots. By the way, so we did an investigation to hey, if this is an illegal voter, I'm going to go arrest him. So his name, by the way, his name is Mark Andrews. He was a Verizon executive, and he was dropping off his ballot and his wife's ballot, which is encouraged and legal under Georgia law. All he was doing was putting in his ballot and his wife's ballot in the drop box. And they said it's O.J. Simpson. He's obviously, because it's a black man putting it in the ballot, it's obviously murder. They just kept showing a bunch of black men putting ballots.
Doing what they lawfully can do. You must see it in the movie. Everything that Greg's talking about is documented in the film. It's really quite great. And there'll be a link to the So, but now to the president himself, Vigilantes Inc. There it is. I mean, again, the drumbeat now for the nationalizing the election. It's louder and louder. I predicted what Mike Johnson would say, and I sent you that, Albert, that he said exactly what I said. Well, there's been a lot of question about the last election, and I know that the president just wants to focus on free and fair elections like the rest of us do. And I mean, Mike Johnson just gives you, he's crawled so far up into Trump that he is, basically just trying to put a good face on whatever madness Trump comes out with. But Albert, play me either Johnson or play me. Go ahead. Yeah, play me. This is what Johnson says about all of this.
He wants Republicans to nationalize elections. Do you agree with him? And do you have confidence in how elections are conducted right now, heading into the midterm?
We have thoughtful debate about our election system every election cycle and sometimes in between. We know it's in our system. The states have been in charge of administering their elections. What you're hearing from the president is his frustration about the lack of some of the blue states, frankly, of enforcing these things and making sure that they are free and fair elections. We need constant improvement on that front. I don't know what the ultimate solution is going to be. I'm not going to get ahead of the negotiations here, but I think that is something that's going to be a continuing theme
here. So again, thank you. There's like a normalcy now. It was what I'm trying to get to it, Greg. There's, let's get it out into that the problems in our country, in this case, with the elections, these are things that we need to discuss. And maybe we do need to sort of open up the hood on elections. And maybe the president is right when he says federalize.
Well, he's right, because we have been purging illegally literally hundreds of thousands of black people in single states. Now, if you looked at that crawler under Mike Johnson, that clip you showed me, that was the key. Forget his lips moving, because, I won't say what I'm thinking, but don't look at his lips. Look at what's underneath. And it said, Johnson says SAVE Act is essential for fair elections. The SAVE Act is that file of deported aliens. People have been deported, and it's been proven that list that there's no match between voter rolls and the SAVE Act. They're just taking out common names, especially Hispanic names. That's who they're targeting. And it's true that a lot of Hispanic men voted for Trump last time, but all the polls are showing very clearly that they've shifted right back. And Hispanic women are solid. So their whole point is to purge the voter rolls. Now, I worked with Black Lives Matter, with the ACLU, Reverend Jackson, Rainbow Push, and the NAACP. We went to court. I'm an expert witness as a statistician, and we showed in Atlanta, in Georgia, that the state Republican Party had illegally removed 198,000 voters. Now, I wasn't guessing or sampling. We got Microsoft and other big tech operations to go through every single name of the people that they purged. And we have the evidence of every single name of 198,000 people removed, overwhelmingly in Georgia, black voters and student voters. In Wisconsin, we saw the same thing. Black voters in Milwaukee removed, students in Madison removed. This is all about purging the voter rolls of so-called illegal aliens or double voters. There was an executive order that also, by the way, gives DOJ the right to get any voter files, specifically so they can see if people are voting twice. Now, I went through this. If you watch my film from 2016 called The Best Democracy Money Can Buy,
that's a great movie.
They had a system called cross-check where they said, a Jesse Jackson's voting in Chicago. And believe it or not, there's a Jesse Jackson voting in Texas. And they said a guy named James Brown, and I'm not making this up, voted 238 times in Georgia. Now, you might say, well, James Brown is just a common name. It's not the same guy voting all these times. That's not a common name for Republican James Brown or Jesse Jackson. 90% of the surnames of the top 90% of the 100 most common surnames in America are minority names: Jackson, Roosevelt, Rodriguez, Chun, Garcia, etc. And so when you use this name matching game, so they're saying people are voting twice.
It's the gateway to suppression, of course.
It's all BS.
Yeah.
It's BS.
So here it is,
And
Nullifidian saying, I know it's a silly question, Greg Palast, but can the courts do anything about this crap?
The courts should do everything about it. The problem is, who's the courts? We have something like 1/3 of all appellate court judges have been appointed by Trump. It's something like 1/4 of all federal district courts have now been appointed by Trump. And you look at the Supreme Court, there's 6 people on there who should change their black robes to white robes and just be done with it.
Yeah.
No, I don't. Yeah, the courts.
The courts, you have been, and Greg Palast has been in court with this. Give us from the ground. Tell us, you've been in these courts. So does that mean what you're talking about is sort of a rubber stamping of this plan to purge the voter rolls, to essentially buttress the kind of voter suppression that we're seeing? Or are you seeing some court wins even from Trump judges?
We're seeing court wins because there's some Trump judges who are actually disgusted by some of this behavior. The the Brennan Center could tell you this because I work with them, is that it's even liberal judges say, well, what can we do? Because if we do the right thing, the appellate court above us is, Trump stooges, and they're just going to overturn me. I've seen this. I've seen some Democratic appointed judges back down because they say, what do you want us to do? The Supreme Court has told us that, and this is a quote from the Supreme Court case, wiping out much of the Voting Rights Act. Scalia wrote, Jim Crow has been eradicated. Really? Really? And that's the other thing. Why hasn't the mainstream media, the Times, the Washington Post, and all the rest, that even MS Now or whatever the hell they call it, they're talking about Fulton County. I didn't see one report saying, and by the way, they're going after Fulton County because it's a black county.
Sure. Last thing, and then I want to ask you an overall question. Play me the Trump. This is Trump, I guess, on nationalizing the elections, and in an interview just yesterday on NBC. Go ahead.
And I didn't say national. I said there are some areas in our country that are extremely corrupt. They have very corrupt elections. Take a look at Detroit. Take a look at Philadelphia. Take a look at Atlanta. There are some areas that are unbelievably corrupt. I could give you plenty of more too. I say that we cannot have corrupt elections. If we have to, if they don't straighten it out. As an example, voter ID. Why don't the Democrats want voter ID? You know who does want voter ID? Democrat voters want it, but Democrat politicians don't. Why don't they want it? Because they want to cheat on elections. Can you imagine if I were a politician and they asked me, do you want voter identification? And I said, no. There's no way you could win that debate. But even the Democrats don't want voter ID. If they don't want voter ID, that means they want to cheat. We can't allow cheating in elections. Now, if we need to put in federal controls as opposed to state controls, remember this, they're really an agent. They're really accumulating the votes for who wins an election. If they can't do it honestly and it can't be done properly and timely, then something else has to happen.
Will you trust the results of the midterms if Republicans lose control of Congress?
I will, if the elections are honest. Look, I want the last one that wants to complain. I just had a great election. They say one of the greatest elections, you will agree, ever. Won all 7 swing states. Won 84% of the counties in America. That's why the map is all red. We just had a great election. I believe there was cheating. I think there was cheating.
Well, speaking of counties, what are you doing in Fulton County?
It was too big to rig.
Speaking of counties, what is happening in Fulton County?
I'm not doing anything, but the FBI went in because it's been under I guess, review for years. The cheating that took place in Fulton County and in that particular
Nobody knows
state.
what's in the warrant.
What are you going to find out? Look, why would anybody be upset that they went in and they got the ballots, I guess, right? Again, they did this. That's been under review and under investigation for 4 years.
Okay,
And
Albert,
now
thank you. We
you
know
gotta
that Trump
clear
was shaking down Georgia for those votes. We know, we have a recording of him shaking down election officials to fraudulently offer votes that were not
right. And I got to tell you that those elections officials, okay, They tried, just so you know, Raffin's Purger, and his name is not Berger, it's Raffin's Purger, is the Secretary of State of Georgia, is a violent, vicious, partisan, vote-cheating Republican. And the governor, Brian Kemp, same and worse. And you'll see that in my film, Vigilantes, Inc. But the one thing that they didn't want to do for Trump, and people think that they're heroic, they're not heroic. They didn't want to go to prison. Don't forget that Trump's attempt to change the vote in Georgia, and particularly in Fulton County, got him a felony racketeering charge and a bunch of other people. It's only because of screw-ups by the prosecutors and the courts saying we can't go after a sitting president. It's the only reason this guy isn't in jail. So what happens to Republicans, just so you know, when they say they've been under investigation, those votes for 4 years, yeah, they have. They've literally twice gone through every single ballot, and they have not found a single one which is illegal. Not only
there was a hand count too. There's it's ridiculous. They 4 times it was reviewed. I think twice by hand count. Now here's my big.
Why the Republicans did that count? Not the Democrats.
I want to ask this question that's in the poll. We have a flash poll going. I haven't even checked out what the results are, but
it's on our Thompson show.
It's a flash
poll.
Are we headed toward a controlled election in 2026? And I want to ask you this. First, let's look at the results, Albert. And again, yes, warning signs are everywhere. The options possibly depends on courts and states. No, democracy will hold, or it's a media exaggeration. Again, are we headed toward a controlled election in 2026? So, Palast, let me ask you, are they going to find their way to controlling this election somehow in the midterms?
100%. The reason they're going after Georgia and Fulton County is that John Ossoff, Progressive Democrats running for re-election, he's got a 70% approval rating.
He's terrific.
Among Georgians, 70%. They can't beat him unless they cheat him. It's really that simple. And the core of his support is Fulton County. So they have to make it impossible and difficult for people to vote. So students who have ID, but their picture isn't on it, can't vote. My daughter was a Georgia student, and she tried like crazy to register. They gave her hell. They said, "You have a New York driver's license." She says, "Yeah, because when I go back to visit my parents, I drive their car. I don't have a car here in Savannah." I mean, she's just an example because it's in my own family. They would not let her vote where she lives in Georgia. And the other thing is, I went to court. I gave 198,000 names of people illegally removed. And by the way, that included Martin Luther King's 92-year-old cousin.
Yeah, this is an incredible, it's all in vigilantes. What does the poll say? What do people think, Albert? I can't see it because it's so damn small on my screen. But I believe, okay, so are we heading toward a controlled election in 2026? Yes, the warning signs are everywhere. By 61%, people feel that's the case. 30% say possibly, depends on the courts and states. So let me put a finer point on it, Greg Palast, in the last minute, and just ask you, is this, all is not lost? Am I right about that? Yeah.
I keep saying they can't steal all the votes all the time. Just so you know what the theft factor is, it's about 3 to 4%. So you have to win with 54% of the vote. 51% won't do it. Don't steal your own vote. Make sure that you vote. The reason they're stealing votes is that they're valuable, my friends. So don't steal your own vote by not voting. Do check your registration right now. Every state you can check your registration online, or go to vote.org. 5 weeks before the election, check again. I can't tell you. I mean, Martin Luther King's cousin, I told you she was purged from the voter roll. She'd been voting at the same place for 48 years. And they said, you can't vote here anymore because you don't live in Atlanta anymore. BS.
Screening tonight at 6:30 for our friends and viewers in Chicago. Brad, one of our regular viewers in Chicago, I haven't heard from him in a little while. I hope he's doing okay. But and everybody else there, it's chilly. 6:30 tonight, a live Q&A with Greg Palast afterward. You can tune into the film and event virtually Again, it's sponsored by Indivisible. Go to gregpalast.com for details, and there'll be a link to gregpalast.com under this video. Again, you need to see two movies if you haven't already. The Best Democracy Money Can Buy, and also, again, the newest film, Vigilantes, Inc., America's New Vote Suppression Hitmen, narrated by Rosario Dawson and produced by Martin Sheen. It's great, and a lot of what we've talked about here is really, you'll see it. It's shown to you in the film. It's great work you do from an investigative standpoint, but, part of I think the magic of what you do, and I say this behind your back, so I may as well say it while you're here. I think you bring it to us in a way that we can both understand and see, and that's one of the things I like about the film. So
the Chicago Tribune said that this is investigative reporting at its best, but very, very entertaining. So that's
again,
because
you
I
make it
want to make
accessible.
sure that you understand.
That would be the way I'd put it.
Yeah, take a look.
Yeah. So we're fans, Palast. Come back and visit us again. Greg Palast, always enjoy our time together. Thanks, my friend.
You got it, Mark. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, so long. Greg Palast, everybody. Bravo.
I've told you it's never easy being in this business.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Right on. Right on. Quickly, a couple of other things I want to get to. Of course, again, I'll have the link to Greg's website under that video if you are looking for it. So much going on. I just do want to visit a couple of items along the way. The Bannon stuff I played for you, it just whips your head around, doesn't it? But the third term is something that Trump, I guess, floated with this guy, Tom Yamas, who's now the anchor at NBC. He was asked by Yamas if there was any possibility that he might still be in power after the conclusion of his second term. And Trump said, ruling out an unconstitutional third term would make life so much less exciting. He touted a strong bench of conservative candidates, promoted the idea of a Vance Rubio presidential ticket. And he said, quote, I really don't want to get into this. We have 3 years to go. Tulsi Gabbard, meanwhile, she's hip deep in this raid of the Fulton County offices of voting. She investigated Puerto Rico's voting machines last spring. There's a new Reuters report that cites that Gabbard's office and also 3 sources familiar with the events are speaking to the fact that she investigated Puerto Rico before Georgia. A team working for the Director of National Intelligence alongside the FBI was tasked with investigating claims that Venezuela hacked voting machines in Puerto Rico. They could not substantiate that claim, according to Reuters. The grabbing of Maduro from Venezuela, as we said on the show, might actually include some kind of confession that they extract from Maduro to talk about the vote. They clearly want to make that connection. So her presence at the raid was both extraordinary, and former intelligence officials were questioning why the country's top intelligence officer with no domestic law enforcement powers shows up at the scene of an FBI raid. The latest polling is kind of backing up what we were talking about earlier in the week. Remember, we were talking about how he's just fallen off a ledge when it comes to immigration policy. Most voters don't think the administration's been honest with the public about the Pretty shooting. And I think on some level, that's kicked open the door to the fact that this entire policy is dishonest. According to a Quinnipiac survey, 61% of voters doubt the administration's account, including 93% of Democrats, 65% of independents, and 19% of Republicans. This is something I was talking about, again, as we get back to yesterday, we had this conservative economist on, and I took a lot of grief for it, maybe deservedly so, I don't know. But anyway, the point is, I was trying to, and I have spoken to the fact that there is a huge, but huge body of opinion from GOP voters that backs the president, even backs the immigration policy. It's incredible to believe. You have thugs in the streets of Minneapolis executing people like Alex Preddy. They had him down, they disarmed him, and they executed him. And somehow, if you look at Republican voters, 85% of them approve of the way ICE is handling immigration problems in the U.S. So that's what I talk about when I say we kind of get in our bubble and we can get into our echo chamber and you don't realize, wow. So this poll is interesting because independent voters now, as you saw, 61% now not approving of that policy. So even Trump says that the administration could use, quote, a softer touch on immigration. Now, they drew down 700 ICE agents from Minneapolis, but that still leaves thousands. They still far exceed the number, do ICE agents, of Minneapolis police officers that are on the streets. It's a pretty severe policy, I'll say that. That Minnesota girl, the 10-year-old, has been released from ICE custody. She spent a month in detention.
Fourth
Imagine
grader.
that.
She's in 4th grade. Imagine how scary that would be for this little girl.
She and her mother released from Texas to head back home to reunite with her father. It's despicable.
And for what?
It's grotesque.
Why?
You've traumatized this girl for life over this BS. I would be ashamed to admit that I voted this in. I'd be ashamed of it. At least cop to the fact that you've made a mistake by voting these people in. Bill Gates saying that he regrets knowing Epstein as his ex-wife alludes to muck in their marriage. Melinda French Gates, his ex-wife, insists that he should answer questions over his relationship with Epstein. A lot of people mentioned in the Epstein file, and that's just what we know. I'll get to David Katz in just a moment. I was just trying to see if there's anything I needed to get to before David Katz. Are there any
your comments?
Any comments quickly before Katz? And I'll take them. Mark, I am in full agreement with you. Thank you, Luis. I don't need to read any further. I will tell you, every comment should start with, Mark, I'm in full agreement with you.
What?
Yeah. I read and studied Marx and Mao, and it doesn't make me a communist or supporter of their beliefs. It makes me educated. Do you, my friend? You're a huge soda in my book.
That's right.
Huge soda is a Michael Shore reference. In his world, he calls somebody who's a big deal a huge soda. So much BS going on, says, thank you, Louise. Michelle Crocker, so much BS going on. If he succeeds in controlling the vote, people are going to book it overseas. Yeah, I mean, it is sort of the last outpost on some level. I'd also suggest what we'll be talking about next is also the last outpost. Maybe there are a couple of last outposts. On the way out of town, I'm talking about the judiciary, and then we'll talk about that with David Katz next. Super sticker from my favorite McAllister. Come on, Lucy.
Big shout out.
Big shout out to Lucy McAllister. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Michelle Crocker says, insane is doing the same thing and expecting something different. They refused to learn from their first term. What did they think was going to happen? Yeah, from his first term. Yeah, what did you think he was going to do this time? This is what I said. This is a guy who tried to overturn an election by every means necessary, created a plan with fake electors, was replacing people with just a cloud of doubt about the outcome. Then he turned a mob on the Capitol to undermine the certification of the vote. You think that guy is somehow going to go, yep, you got me. Well, you beat me in the midterms, and, no. I mean, it's just crazy. There is absolutely no way that these people give up power. And that's why I played the Bannon cut for you I wanted you to hear that. Apparently, Palpatine didn't really die. Michelle Crocker said he's running the country.
Big shout out.
Big shout out. Thanks for that, Michelle. All right, I'll get to more later. The like button. Oh, yeah, the like button. How about the like button, everybody? It helps us in the world of YouTube, but we
with
need
your
it.
iron rod.
Costs you nothing. Now, before I get to Katz, I must quickly, Albert, if you'll permit me.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I must welcome in our latest, or one of our latest partners and sponsors. It's Zelmins. Zelmins is a product that we road tested for a month before we brought them on the air. They are not a breath mint, but they are a breath treatment, and there is, on the outside of these tiny capsules, a little bit of mint, spearmint, and what's the other one? Kim?
Peppermint. Just enough for you to have a minty mouth. And
Yeah.
then the real action happens in your digestive system, right?
Yeah, because that's where your bad breath comes.
Yeah.
It comes from the stuff in your stomach that's digesting, and it comes back up. So you can swish it around in your mouth to give you that minty kind of taste in your mouth, but then you swallow the capsules. I take 3 of them at a time, and it'll completely neutralize garlic, onion, anything else that's down there that is producing bad breath. Fight bad breath with Zelmins Minty Mouth, and give it a ride. I think you'll really be happy. I was really amazed. And, Courtney and I have used it for morning breath, so we'll take it before we go to bed at night. And Zelmins.com is where you get it. Tiny capsules, huge results. Use our discount code MARKT for 15% of your first order, 15% off at Zelmins.com. MARKT for 15% off your first order. Zelmins.com.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I cannot leave the barrister waiting any longer. He's the brilliant voice of legal analysis across the BBC, across London radio. You also hear him on News Nation, on Fox News Channel. I've seen him on in Australia. One of the great legal analysts in the English-speaking world, David Katz, everyone. Now he's a defense attorney. Formerly, he was a federal prosecutor.
Great to be with you, Mark, Kim.
It's great to be with you, David. And, I saw, just speaking of prosecutors, that there was a resignation in Minnesota from a prosecutor there who said, I just can't do this anymore. This job sucks. Trying to go after the agenda associated with illegals, and I'll just use it in quotes, that's being pursued by ICE and Customs and Border Authority in Minnesota. Can you speak to the latest resignations in Minnesota on the part of prosecutors?
Well, with her, if you have some great quips that come to your mind, say them on a podcast. But if you say them in federal court, you have to really be in extremis. Well, she was in extremis because she was about to be held in contempt of court by this judge. And they had a very frank conversation. And of course, it's incredibly revealing to have this inside look from someone who was then an attorney with them. So her story is that she goes to work as an attorney at ICE, and then she gets designated to the U.S. Attorney's Office. We used to have some of that when I was an assistant U.S. attorney. They've had a lot more of it now because they need bodies to throw into federal court in front of these judges, and there are not enough assistant U.S. attorneys. Why is that? Well, with the regime that's in power now, about a quarter to a third of the assistant U.S. attorneys in some offices across the country have quit. They've resigned because they don't want to carry water for Trump and some of the U.S. attorneys or acting U.S. attorneys that they put in power, including right here in Southern California. We've had about a quarter of the assistant U.S. attorneys quit. I have a major case down there which had 3 assistant U.S. attorneys on it when Trump came into office. Since then, all 3 have quit.
And let me just to follow up on that. You're saying likely because they just don't want to be associated with this regime?
Absolutely. That, and because they don't want to, carry out the orders. I mean, just don't want to digress, but this is like so, current, and it's happening right here in Southern California. There was a deputy sheriff, I think he was, a police officer of some sort. He arrives at a scene north of Los Angeles. There is a woman who's videotaping what's going on, which she has every right to do. Maybe she's a little loud. She's protesting. She has a right to protest. She has a right to be loud. Anyway, the cop doesn't like it. He throws her to the ground. He handcuffs her very roughly. He injures her. And this is all captured. You know, nowadays we have these videotapes, thank goodness. In the old days, when I was an assistant U.S. attorney, even if the FBI was in good faith in trying to make a record, you know, everybody thought it couldn't be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. Now the videotapes, the photos, they've changed everything, Mark. So anyway, he's actually prosecuted in front of a very conservative Republican-appointed judge. He's prosecuted. He's found guilty of felony civil rights violation of beating this woman, and he's about ready to get sentenced. Anyway, the 4 federal prosecutors, or maybe 5, in the U.S. Attorney's Office right here in Los Angeles quit rather than carry out the Trump administration's agenda, which was to soft pedal this case, not ask for any jail time. So the first thing that they did was they asked Mark that it be knocked down to a misdemeanor. And the judge was like, why should I knock this case down to a misdemeanor? Conservative Republican appointed judge. I was here for the jury trial. There was no misconduct. The fact that you want to go soft on somebody who was found guilty by the jury of felony civil rights violations of battering and beating this woman, that's not a reason to change course. Well, they sent in a new assistant U.S. attorney. His name is Robert Keenan. He's gone on to be in the Civil Rights Division. We may talk about some of the outrageous things that the Civil Rights Division is doing. That would include Don Lemon and a few other things. But this Robert Keenan, he says, I'll carry the ball. And it's been very, very good for his professional career. You know, he's an old timer sitting in the U.S. Attorney's Office, but he's willing to carry water on this after 4 or 5 assistant U.S. attorneys have resigned in protest. So we have a situation that's what eventually happens with the case is first they ask for a low sentence, and then, as I believe what happened is they dismissed the case altogether. So Trump didn't have to issue him a pardon. His Department of Justice just stopped pursuing the case. They refused to pursue the case anymore. This Robert Keenan did. So anyway, so the case in Minnesota, of course, you can imagine that in Minneapolis, they've had to send in a lot of people who are not assistant U.S. attorneys, both to replace the assistant U.S. attorneys who quit, and just because of the number of cases that they're doing. So this federal judge issues an order. He's a U.S. district judge. He issues an order that various people who've been wrongly detained be released, and he sets a deadline to do that. This lady comes over from the ICE. This attorney comes over from the ICE, and now she's a special acting, assistant U.S. attorney designated to do that. They give her 88 cases, Mark, in a month. How could anybody do 88 cases in a month? And the cases involve finding number 1 and making sure he's released by the deadline, which is tomorrow. Finding number 2 and bringing him back from Texas to Minnesota to follow the order. How is she possibly going to do these 88 cases? Meanwhile, the judge's orders are not being abided by. So the judge calls her into court, including about holding her in contempt. Now, she's got a co-counsel on these cases who's either resigned or is also facing contempt. So basically, she's on a team where her teammate has either resigned or has her own problems. So now she got, I guess, the 88 cases all by herself. And she's explaining to the judge candidly, she has a duty of candor to the court, how good this is going to be for her professional career. I guess we're going to find out. And she says, Judge, this job sucks. The system sucks. I'm trying to abide by your order. When you threaten me, I get on the phone and I threaten ICE. And guess what? They don't do what I say. It takes 2 calls. It takes me threatening to quit the government. And then she finally says the quip that probably wasn't the cleverest thing to say. She says, hold me in contempt, put me in jail. At least I'll get a good night's sleep. Which, by the way, she would not get a better night. Very naive. She hasn't been an assistant U.S. attorney for very long, acting or otherwise. Jail is never a good night's sleep as any other messed up, trouble-plagued sleep. Jail sleep, have never spent a night in jail, but I've had enough clients over all these years and been in AUS long enough. And you never say to a judge, you might as well hold me in contempt, because you know what? Especially some of the judges I've appeared in front of, some of the famous old timers, they'd put you in jail whether you had a toothbrush or not. But anyway, the judge seems like he's going to go probably light on her personally. The administration did not like her making those candid comments, basically that they're non-compliant, that you have to push ICE to get them to do anything, and they're still non-compliant. Obviously, that is not taking these cases seriously, Mark, assigning 88 cases to one, borrowed attorney from ICE that you've made an acting assistant U.S. attorney. And so they fired her. But apparently she's gone back to her job at ICE. I guess we'll see how that one plays out for her personally.
That's almost a movie moment where she turns back at the judge. Like it's like an Al Pacino, "You're out of order. This whole court is out of order" type thing. But
the model, I got to say one thing. The model for that was a famous old federal judge that I appeared in front of all the time. He's the one who supposedly, he never waved his gun when I was in his courtroom, so I have no personal knowledge. But in the movie, doesn't he wave his gun and he says to Al Pacino, "You're out of order," and Al Pacino, so that's another quip. Never say that. Say it on a podcast. Never say that in federal court.
I'm out of order. You're out of order.
You, sir, are a liar.
Yeah, right. So there's something else. There's another lawsuit out of Minnesota and Minnesota educators. And, I just feel like that schools are such a special place, and these kids are being subjected to trauma that will linger through their entire lives. So this coalition of Minnesota school districts and educators did file a lawsuit yesterday to block federal immigration enforcement agents from conducting operations near public schools. So they're challenging the Department of Homeland Security's decision to bypass all those protections that limit ICE operation at, quote, sensitive locations like schools. And this is part of this Operations Metro surge. They don't need to respect these sort of long respected areas. And the groups are saying that DHS's activities have disrupted education, endangered students, traumatized immigrant families, to the point where they're too scared to bring their kids to school, and they're opting for virtual learning. So in the Columbia Heights public schools, 20% of the kids in this culturally diverse Minneapolis suburb, they're not even showing up anymore. So tell me what the realities are concerning a suit like this. Can they sue to keep ICE away from the schools? I mean, can they be successful in the lawsuit, I guess is what I'm asking.
The realities are probably not good. That's another Katsadamas prediction. We have all of these norms of decency, of regularity, which have been observed for decades by Democrats and Republicans. Now we have Trump, who doesn't want to respect these norms and wants to see how far he can push things. Obviously, it makes a lot of sense. And I say obviously because it's been obvious to previous administrations, as I say, Republican as well as Democratic, that if you go to schools like this, you deter people from going to school. That is not good. Even if there's, 3 people that you think their parents are going to show up and you're going to catch them picking up their kids, the impact of arresting 3 people, of deporting 3 people, if that's what you think is the best that's going to come out of this, traumatizing the entire rest of the school population, having people not send their kids to school, how does that possibly make any cost-benefit analysis sense? So that hasn't been done, but I don't think that's been not done because of statute. Likewise, churches, they're all screaming about Don Lemon and this church like, oh, this was the crime of the century. Of course, the administration, ICE, Trump, have disrupted churches to an incredible extent. People are scared to go, especially Hispanic families are scared to go to church, even if they're very observant. They've gotten dispensations, I think, from the Catholic diocese that it's okay. Don't risk getting deported. Don't risk having your kids traumatized to go to church on Sunday. But that's been the impact of that. And so, again, if you respect religion, as the Trump claims to in this Don Lemon nonsense, if you respect religion, you don't go and arrest people at church or try to find people who are in the country under deportation orders at church. But if you do those things, which Trump and ICE are doing, I'm not sure where the illegality is. I mean, if ICE could pick up, it's incredibly poor judgment. I don't see what the illegality is.
Sure, this is interesting. This is sort of just, you're saying custom as opposed to some kind of law that keeps these federal agents out of places of worship.
Now, with the workplace raids, there used to be big friends of Trump and the Republicans, right? Trump 1.0 and the Republicans before that especially. They'd say, yeah, talk all that anti-immigration rhetoric, but I'm running a packing plant here, okay?
Right.
I need these people here. Packing plant. Don't come anywhere near my plantation where I'm having these, undocumented workers toil in the hot sun without giving them water breaks and everything else. Don't send OSHA, and definitely don't send ICE to these plantations that I'm running. These would be, of course, the Republicans' big friends that would lobby for that behind the scenes. And so I think now they're not going to workplaces so much, although they did go to some workplaces in the garment district down here.
Well, the garment district, I think initially the sweep was to go to workplaces, and then they got some of that pushback that you're describing. And of course, that very famous roundup, was it in Georgia, where they picked up all those South Korean workers, and you'll remember all of that. So they've been, I think they've misstepped a few times on all that, but certainly this is associated with just intimidation, right? You show up at the schools, you're just trying to rough up a community. You're trying to, the cruelty, the brutality is part of the process. Now, it is true that a judge in Oregon has temporarily, anyway, restricted federal officers from using tear gas at protests. And this is big news, I think, David, because I've seen these non-lethal munitions fired at very close range toward these people who are protesting. I mean, it's a cruelty of its own. I mean, it may not be lethal, but you can mess somebody up for life. You can even blind them with some of these pepper sprays and tear gas fired at close range. Speak to this judge's decision in Oregon.
Well, I agree with the judge's decision, but this case, if ICE keeps using pepper spray and hurting people so much, people who are just out there protesting, if they keep doing that, I think this case will go to the U.S. Supreme Court because this judge in Oregon has said you can't use pepper spray and what's the other one? Tear gas.
Yeah, pepper balls also, all of these sort of what they consider less than lethal weapons, paintball guns, etc. Yeah.
The Oregon judge has basically said that they may be near lethal. Near lethal is pretty much like lethal, and you can't use near lethal or lethal force unless it's a situation that calls for the use of deadly force, of near lethal force. And these situations have not. And so that's what the common sense injunction is there. If it were a situation where, someone was actually attacking the ICE agent and the ICE agent couldn't defend himself any other way, of course, he could use the pepper spray. If there were a total riot situation that had broken out and they couldn't control it any other way, of course, they could use tear gas. That's not what the real issue is in these cases, Mark. And we've seen it in the videos like the one you're showing. These are innocent protesters who are not anyone who could have deadly force or non-lethal force used against them. If these were police cases, they would sue under 1983. There'd be a civil rights lawyer like my old friend Johnny Cochran or somebody like that who would take this case and would sue. And that's all the judge said in that situation. The reason I say it may reach the Supreme Court is that the Eighth Circuit, which is very conservative, dismissed the injunction. They stopped the injunction from being in force. And Minneapolis and Minnesota are in the Eighth Circuit. So as things stand, at least right now, that judge's order, which was very similar to the Oregon judge's order, was set aside. So you have this conflict in the circuits. I'm not exactly sure what happened with the Chicago one, but there's a ruling like that. And those rulings will end up getting made. They'll be inconsistent. And I think that that's a likely U.S. Supreme Court one. I think the U.S. Supreme Court, if it ever takes this case, if ICE keeps doing this, I think that they're liable to restrict that, even though they're a conservative court. You see the videos, Mark, part of it's driven by the videos, and you see it, the horror across, people of goodwill in this country, the awful impact this is having on our international image. There's about to be problems at the Olympics right now where they're going to jeer and boo American athletes.
Oh, yeah.
Who needs that? There's talk about boycotting the World Cup, which is coming here, or the Europeans only going.
It's done great reputational harm to the U.S. Yeah.
On some level, the U.S. Supreme Court will understand that, and they are not going, I think, affirm. I mean, U.S. Supreme Court allows the use of pepper spray and other, near lethal force. And there'll be someone who's been blinded, who'll be one of the plaintiffs in the case that will.
Well, it's an ACLU case that was brought, David, as you're aware. So you're right. They can bring in petitioners who are associated with, real damage physically. I wanted to ask you about this Pentagon push to punish Senator Mark Kelly, over the video that just said don't disobey unlawful orders, and a federal judge saying the Justice Department lawyers who have brought this may really lack a precedent, a legal precedent, which I guess is, about this stuff, what you need for the Defense Department's attempt to punish Senator Mark Kelly. Again, it was a closed courtroom hearing, and the judge, Richard J. Leon, who was nominated by George Bush, by the way, so Republican nominee, pressed the Trump administration's legal team on whether the government has the power to take action against Kelly. Quote, "You're asking me to do something the Supreme Court or the D.C. Circuit has never done." So what could happen here? And let me ask you one other question. This is really born of this trigger-happy president we have who's suing everybody who draws breath and might have even said anything in the least bit discouraging about him or his administration. Why can't Kelly sue the Justice Department, sue back the same government? The government's being sued for $10 billion by Trump or for $235 million by Trump, et cetera. Why can't Mark Kelly do that same thing?
Well, first of all, Mark Kelly could do that. He'd probably have to show that the prosecution or the investigation against him were done in bad faith. Right. That's usually the stumbling block for most people. But of course, Trump makes a record where it all happens out in front of you. The bad faith is all in the Truth Social post that Trump sends out. It's in the orders that he gives to his minions. It's statements that, the minions make. So unlike most people who are prosecuted or investigated who can't get over that hurdle of showing, bad faith on the government's part or, vindictive prosecution, selective prosecution, being picked out. Those things are all illegal, but it's very, very hard to show and it's hard to get discovery. In Mark Kelly's case, I think that he could succeed, and he'll have to figure out. He's a potential next president of the United States. He's got to figure out, which one helps him more politically if he wants to be looked at as someone, the Republicans, just another guy trying to grab money from the government. That's how they'll depict it when he brings a righteous lawsuit for being singled out by them. But let me talk to your other point just for a minute. I'm not a name dropper, Mark, but if I know somebody, I can't resist saying so on your program. I know Richard Leon quite well. I've met him over the years. I knew him before he became a U.S. district judge. And the fact that he was nominated by Bush, he's one of those ones like Souter or Stevens. The fact that he was picked by a Republican, there's Republicans and there are Republicans, and he's wonderful. And he really gets civil rights. He really gets the law. He's a very, very smart, able judge. So I'm predicting Katsadamas that he will say that there are no precedents, and he will say that this investigation cannot go forward properly. And what he's saying about precedent, it's clear that Kelly could say everything that he did say, and these other people could say whatever they said. As a citizen, the administration is saying that as retired military, he has less First Amendment rights. And it is true that active military may have some circumscribed constitutional rights less than you and I have, but that has never been held to apply to someone who's retired military. And the fact that you're not active, but that you're just retired and getting a pension, that they can demote you and harass you in this way, just because you're retired and getting a pension, I think he'll win that it's a violation of the First Amendment. And again, I think it'll be dropped. I think he'll rule in favor of Senator Kelly. It'll be dropped. And a week from now, we'll be talking about the latest outrage and the latest enemy that they're trying to, hook up on some bogus basis.
Sure. That makes sense. When they even launched it, it seemed as though it was destined for the trash heap
of history.
But it's all the crap along the way. It's the smearing of Kelly, although it may have elevated Kelly in a position politically to make a run for president for all we know. So I want to quickly, I got an email and it specifically mentioned you, so I wanted to get to that. And
I've received a lot of positive letters.
Hi, Mark. Can you ask David Katz about
I'm not in the Epstein files. I'm not in the Epstein files.
About the Washington Post story.
Inbox, but I'm not in the Epstein files.
Can you ask David Katz about the Washington Post story about Homeland Security and secretive subpoenas? It is very scary. The headline is Homeland Security is targeting Americans with this secretive legal weapon. In October, a retiree emailed a DHS attorney to urge mercy for an asylum seeker. Then the DHS subpoenaed his Google account and sent investigators to his home. Let me just put a couple other specifics on this, just in 30 seconds or less. In essence, this guy is close to 70 years old, as I recall. He was he's a vet, and he was reading about this case against this Afghan they were trying to deport. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security is trying to deport this Afghan who was claiming that if he was deported to Afghanistan, he would be killed by the Taliban, okay? And he was someone who had helped the U.S. in Afghanistan. So again, moved to act, this guy pounded out a letter, an email, okay, to say he was concerned about this and they should reconsider, etc. Then 3 hours later, as I recall, he gets a note in email form from the Department of Homeland Security saying, just to let you know, Department of Homeland Security, Google tells them that the Department of Homeland Security has subpoenaed his information around his email account. And then they actually sent, Department of Homeland Security did, the feds, to his home. And this happened and accelerated to that place very, very quickly. Speak to this now, this kind of hidden subpoena. He wasn't even allowed to see the subpoena. It all, again, emerged from what was, it would seem, a fairly innocent email of, again, a request associated with trying to show mercy for someone who was on the verge of being deported back to a place, Afghanistan, where he would be killed by the Taliban.
You know, Mark, we talked about this a week or two ago, where the ICE agents were going into people's homes and saying they had an administrative warrant. And that was not a judicial warrant issued by a judge or a magistrate. And people said, well, what is an administrative warrant? It's a misnomer. It's just an administrative piece of paper. This is just another administrative piece of paper. This all goes back to things like the Patriot Act, this diminution of our constitutional rights and our expectation of privacy. And, you know, people were so scared after 9/11 that they went along with a lot of this stuff. Even some Democrats went along with this kind of stuff. And the reality is they can get an incredible number of records about you or me or this poor fellow who was just writing a letter of concern to someone in the government. So he was lucky to even get notice. And again, as you said, the facts, he wrote a letter which didn't have anything threatening. It was just a letter of concern. You know, why is the government not doing more to help this Afghan person? Why are they sending him back to Afghanistan where he has a credible claim that he'll be killed by the Taliban? The government attorney who got this must be some snowflake. Sounds like some Trump administration snowflake that gets this letter, sees the word Taliban or sees something in it, sees the fact that, oh my God, he has my email address. Well, he's a member of the bar. You can go on the bar site, which is how this fellow did it. He went on the bar site, I think the Florida bar. He found his email address. He sent it to the email address on the Florida bar. So this snowflake Trumpy attorney, I guess, refers him for investigation. The good luck that he has, you can kind of call it good luck, is that Google gives him notice. When we finally do get the subpoena, and now the ACLU is bringing his case pro bono, but we finally do get the subpoena, it also has this, and this is very common, don't talk about this subpoena. It admonishes Google or the other recipient of the subpoena not to disclose it to the account holder, the person who has that Google account. In some instances, Google and the other ones have defied those instructions. Those instructions are almost always illegal unless it's some case that really rises to the level. But the government, and especially under Trump, they put that on all these pieces of paper. Don't disclose this like it's a big secret. And a lot of like banks and so forth, they don't disclose it. Or a lot of normal people, they think, I don't want the headache. Google and those kind of companies have to have a policy, Mark. They've gotten something like 27,000 of these kind of subpoenas in 6 months. I don't know if that's all the tech companies or just Google, but it's tens of thousands of subpoenas that we're talking about. And a lot of times they're not disclosed at all. This one, at least they said to him, Google's asking, the government's asking about you. Google sent him that much. And he got really interested in it and he kept pursuing it. And he kept trying to find out what the subpoena was. The government's position and Google's position was that he had to go to federal court and file a claim within 7 days, or they were going to give the information about him to the federal government. How on earth can the normal person, this is a guy, a retired guy at home, just writing a letter of concern. How can a normal person get to federal court with an attorney within 7 days to stop the train? In this particular case, it sounds like Google didn't actually do that. So he figures, well, not much to worry about. And then he gets the knock on the door from some people who are just asking around. And it's very intimidating. All of this is very intimidating. One more interesting thing about the story, he now has the ACLU. He now is challenging the fact that they're trying to get his records. Google has apparently not yet turned over all the records that the government wanted in this administrative subpoena, which are intrusive, Mark. It's all this stuff about him, any other accounts he has, any other name he's used, his social security number, his driver's license. I mean, it's chilling. The idea of chilling speech, all this guy ever did was write a letter. Anyway, one more anecdote from the story. Then as they're leaving, Mark, he says to him, I'm not going to be put on some list, am I now? I'm not going to have trouble flying, am I? And he just went to Puerto Rico or some maybe his foreign place in the Caribbean with his wife. And guess what? His luggage got searched. His luggage got randomly picked out for search. Mark, the Democrats, when they get power back, have to really take civil rights seriously. They have to really take the civil liberties seriously. They have to have proscriptions, Mark, that are so specific that the next Trumpy guy who comes along, the next Republican Congress that will go along with anything, they have to things. They're so clear that when you go in front of a judge, you can show in black and white, hey, they just violated the law. And there has to be more disclosure. These things have to be disclosed. This guy was lucky to learn about this.
Yeah. I mean, that's so well stated. It's just, it's so stark what's happening. And the one thing, if I can give you a little good news, I suppose, if you're,
please.
And you can just comment on the fact that the redrawing of maps in California apparently has been okayed by SCOTUS. So you've got the Supreme Court saying it's okay to redistrict and to redraw maps in California that would then, if you will, answer the redistricting that occurred in Texas, right?
My Katsadama streak is alive and well. I feel like Pete Rose. My streak may come to an end with the tariffs case, which I think they're going to reverse Trump on the tariffs. But my streak is alive because I predicted this one. The reason I predicted this one is that the Supreme Court has said that there can be partisan gerrymandering. And they said that in the case of Texas, when Texas, at Trump's insistence, redistricted their congressional delegations so that there will be 5 more Republicans in it. And we had to fight fire with fire here in California. And to Governor Newsom's credit, he got that referendum on there. It passed with like 2/3 of the vote here in California, the effect of which will be to redistrict California and to countervail the 5 gains that the Texas got. There'll be a countervailing 5 gains of Democrats, and hopefully that'll be the end of it. And by the way, ours sunsets, so it's not like we're going to do that forever. If the Republicans stop playing that game, that partisan game, we will stop counteracting it, countervailing it, and we'll go back to the California Commission approach, which is of course a good approach. But if other people won't play by the rules, Mark, what are you going to do? Unilateral disarmament? No, we did not unilaterally disarm so that Trump and the Texas Republicans could just roll over our rights. And so anyway, but the thing about this case, which is really interesting, but I got to tell one more anecdote really quick. The judge who was on the 2-1 decision they formed this court, which is both a circuit judge and a couple of district judges, and they have a 3-judge court. And then these issues can go straight to the U.S. Supreme Court, which is what happened here. The judge who was on the panel and who wrote the decision 2-1 upholding our redistricting in California was Josephine Staten. She had that hearing on Wednesday, and I was in front of her on Thursday on my case. And the clerk turned to her at the end of the day's hearings and said, "We sure had an active week, didn't we?" My case didn't make it such an active week, but that case on Wednesday made it an active week. And the U.S. Supreme Court, without dissent, said that was fine because it was another partisan gerrymander. The argument that people make is that it's a totally racist gerrymander, which is in violation of the Equal Protection Clause. But the U.S. Supreme Court has said, no, if it's for partisan purposes, you can do it. I don't really agree with that. But if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. And to say that Texas's was purely partisan and then to turn around and say that ours wasn't purely partisan, they both were purely partisan.
Yeah, no, I think that it's so clear. Right. It's a shame that there can't be some sort of neutral body that every state appoints. I mean, this is sort of what they claim there is, but of course there isn't. to handle this redistricting. But, sadly, we are where we are. David, thanks so much for always being available to us on Thursdays. Really look forward to it. So, Katsadamas, you can cash the winning ticket on that, which was the California redistricting. Now you've got the big prediction, which is that SCOTUS will rule against the Trump tariffs. They've certainly dragged their feet. And you know something? I'll say this. I mean, you're probably right, because you're probably right and usually right about everything. But they could have enjoined this, or they could have stopped this, right, David? They could have said, hey, we will rule on it, but for now, no tariffs. They could have done that months and months and months ago. They didn't do that. They said, go ahead, continue with the tariffs. We will rule on it. We'll take the case. Just tell me why they might have not enjoined it and why they let it go for all these many months if, as you say, they are going to rule it unconstitutional.
Well, if you believe in the idea that the U.S. Supreme Court is political, that they're just, 9 politicians in black robes, Trump was really riding high at that point. It would have been a big mess to have enjoined them.
I see.
If you think for more principled reasons, they weren't exactly sure what to do when it came along. And the circuit court, which had said that the tariffs were illegal and were not properly done under the emergency powers of the president. Remember, Congress has the sole right to set tariffs and taxes unless there's a true emergency. Some statute allowed 40 years ago, the president to have this tariff authority in true emergencies. It's never been used until Trump came along. And what Trump's talking about here, fentanyl coming into the country and a negative trade balance, those are not emergencies. They're not emergent. They've been around for decades. So because he doesn't have that emergency power under that statute, because it doesn't factually apply and it's so clear, that is why those tariffs are no good. Now, if once they're thrown out, he could impose tariffs under some other law and there'll be litigation over that. But at least at the time that they came along, this circuit court, which said they were no good, did not enjoin them. So the U.S. Supreme Court says, okay, on this record, even the circuit court didn't think they should be enjoined. They thought they should go on and let them keep collecting them. So we're going to reverse that. I think they just didn't have the votes at that point. I think that they didn't know. It would have taken, I think, 5 justices, right, to have issued that shadow docket.
Yeah, and I think what you're kind of saying is, and this is the disturbing thing, is that sometimes the popularity of the president is such that they are loath to step in and say that something has to be stopped while they rule on the constitutionality on down the way. I mean, it sounds to me like, again, I think you see the pure politics associated with, if not all the justices, a sufficient number of them, that they were loath to go up against them. I have a quick question about, I don't see what this, how can this be related? Zero Sum says, David Katz, do you think the Electoral College has to go away first to get rid of gerrymandering? Gerrymandering has nothing to do with the Electoral College. Maybe you can set me straight on it, but I mean, gerrymandering is most relevant to the House seats, I thought, David, right? I mean, the Electoral College is with the general.
Can I answer that in 1 second? I just wanted to go back to the question about the tariffs. I'm not saying that it was political. I'm saying there's a lot of people who think it's political. And if you think it's political, then another reason to think that they are ultimately going to throw out the tariffs is because Trump's a lot less popular right now.
I think you made the point, and I guess I'm saying I agree with that position, even if it's not yours. Yeah, I agree.
The other reason would be that the case was about to break 5-4 and be a huge controversy, and Trump made a big deal about this. This would be the biggest decision of the decade if they ruled against him and destroy the American economy. With him saying things like that, the Chief Justice might have thought, you know what? I don't want this to be decided 5-4 or 6-3. Let's see if we can build more consensus. Let's see if there's some way we can throw out these tariffs and get more consensus. So my thought is that the Chief Justice is trying to build consensus. So it's 7-2 or maybe even 9-0, because that would have quite an impression if the U.S. Supreme Court said unanimously 9-0. Trump went too far. This wasn't an emergency. That would heal to some extent, the people who think there's
it's not
no
going to be
rule of law.
9-0. You know that, David Katz. Come on. All right. So
7-2. But maybe you can bet on 7-2. The Electoral College. Let me say two things about the Electoral College because they don't get said often enough.
And because I now I see what Zero Sum is saying a little bit. So go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Everyone thinks the Electoral College is total garbage and we should get rid of it immediately. There are two arguments for having an Electoral College. One is that small minority positions have more power. This was always an argument that was sort of the Jewish vote, that there weren't that many Jews, but there were enough in Illinois, New York, and a couple of other states that Jews could pursue issues of interest to Jews because they could control, right? If they could make Illinois go one way or the other, they had clout, even if they were 1 or 2% of the population, right? So that was the idea, was that you had these minority rights in the Electoral College. And the other one was that you could steal the whole election by stealing one state. No matter how many, let's say they pack the vote in Texas, and suddenly Texas votes 5 million more votes for Trump. Alabama suddenly votes 95-5. Alabama votes 95-5, and it overwhelms the rest of the vote. When you add the popular vote all over the country, Trump wins because he's won Alabama 95-5. And so the idea was that you couldn't, right? You could only, no matter how corrupt you were, you could only control one state. Then people thought, well, the elections were so clean. This is before Trump's doing what he's doing now and trying to nationalize the vote, Mark. The elections were so clean that second argument for the Electoral College didn't really apply. So I don't want to take a position on the Electoral College, but it's going to be incredibly hard to change. I think you need a constitutional amendment.
It's not going anywhere. It's worked so well for the minority party, as you know. I mean, it's an uphill struggle for the
Republicans, right?
Well, it's worked well for them, the Republicans, the minority party, and so they're not going to change you, and you'd need them to change it. I mean, it's the same reason that Puerto Rico's not going to get voting senators, and District of Columbia is not going to. And I mean, it's politics. It's winning elections. It's retaining power, and that really brings us back to where we started today, which is about to what depths will they go to retain power? And of course, I feel they'll go to the depths that we never could have dreamt of. And already I think you're seeing it on the streets of the U.S., and you're going to see it actually get worse come election time. He's talking about nationalizing the election, David, as you know, and he's talking about a number of things that are just unconstitutional. And you, as someone who's worked in the federal system as a prosecutor, you have to see the utter folly of this on one level, but how dangerous it is on another.
Well, one, we should try to win too big to rig. And I think that things are going in that direction. I mean, this is like having the redcoats. This is like having a standing army of the English. So what? It's not the English that's a standing army among the colonies. It's ICE. And I think there are things that ICE is doing that the redcoats didn't do. I don't know if they knocked, people who were doing nothing but saying, Brits go home. They knocked them to the ground, that they shot them after they disarmed them and killed them. So this is absolutely awful. And if the people it's turning people off. His polls keep going down. Even on immigration, Trump's polls are going down. So I think in the midterms,
well, especially on immigration. Yeah, but you're right. Even on immigration, because that was the thing that propelled him to power. I see your point. Yeah.
We're going to win too big to rig. And what was the other point that you were making, Mark, about the?
No, I was just saying that the idea somehow that you could nationalize the election is.
That will never happen. That's in the Constitution. Even the majority leader, Thune, he suddenly got his copy of the Constitution out. He hasn't parsed it too carefully on a lot of these issues.
He suddenly found his copy of the Constitution.
Right. To find the fact that the states control the elections. Guess what? They control the federal elections as well as controlling state elections. The idea that Trump could nationalize federal elections and the state would then be responsible for state elections is garbage. The Constitution puts all those powers in the state.
Find him across the universe of media, from London to Auckland, from Los Angeles to New York, the former federal prosecutor, now defense attorney in Southern California. Thank you. We'll see you next week, David Katz.
Mark, if people are watching in real time, I'm on News Nation in 45 minutes talking about the EEOC subpoena, which has to do with supposedly Nike is discriminating against white people. That's
Wait a
going to be
minute.
on
Who is
45
having
minutes.
that conversation?
All right.
We're having that conversation on News Nation in 45 minutes.
All right. Get going, counselor. Good to see you. David Katz, everybody. Love it, love it, love it, love it.
Hey, which one do you use, Mark Thompson?
Use Mark Thompson.
The Mark Thompson Show. News Nation, not news station. News Nation. All right. I'm just saying, if you want to check it out, David is he's all over. Really great. Very much in demand. You can understand why. And I would say that David's positions and predictions have been pretty accurate along the way. So there's that too. Quickly
wrap it up with some CoachellaValleyCoffee.com.
This is the Sunrise blend. I'm rocking the Sunrise blend today.
I got my vanilla tea today.
It's pretty good.
Put that coffee down.
I'll put it down just long enough to tell you that you too can have the greatest coffee experience that you've ever had. It's the best coffee I've ever tasted. And I've tasted coffee, as you might imagine, all around the world. In the most luxurious settings one could ever imagine. And in the mountainous regions of Morocco, with those who had little to their name, who could only cobble together a fine cup of coffee. Good as it was, it couldn't hold a candle to Coachella Valley Coffee. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Use our discount code MARKT at checkout, 10% off. It's all hand roasted. This is fresh crop. That's one of the great things about their coffee. And as Kim mentioned, the tea is wonderful. They have loose leaf. They have all these. Knock around with their teas. Everything there is curated with such care.
I'm a huge believer in Coachella Valley Coffee. I think their product is the best you'll find.
Get on the website, knock around, discover for yourself, and order. Road test it. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. When you check out, though, use our discount code MARKT, and you'll get 10% off. Coachella Valley Coffee.
Put that coffee down.
CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Yes. Let me check out
The Mark Thompson Show.
All right, something in the way of the poll here.
Use Mark Thompson.
We have a flash poll going. It will be up for another
Thompson Show flash poll.
Minute or two, actually. Albert, what's happening in the flash poll? We have a flash poll about the election and about election manipulation. Are we heading toward a controlled election in 2026? Yes, the warning signs are everywhere, say 61% of the respondents. Possibly, depends on courts and states, say 29%. 8% say no, democracy will hold, and 1% say media exaggeration.
I really want to say democracy will hold, but more and more I'm thinking warning signs are everywhere.
Yeah, I think the warning signs are everywhere. I like that more and more people are talking about it. I mean, we talked about it right away when they went to Fulton County and said, this isn't about the last election. Give me a break. This is about the next election. We've been talking about that on this channel for a long time. I wonder if I can quickly. Oh, it's already a little bit late, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. Kim wants to get to the after party. She wants.
No,
to
it's okay, but you know.
No, okay. Well, then let's go to the top of the
I
next
blame
hour.
you.
Yeah, exactly.
It is already. We're past the top of the next hour.
We love Zelmins. Say Annie and friends. I'm having trouble ordering cupcakes, but as soon as I figure it out, we're subscribing. How can you have trouble ordering the cupcakes? You go to sweet106bakery.com, SUITE, sweet106bakery.com, and then order. And then use our discount code MARKT. You'll get 15% off. If worst comes to worst, call them, I suppose. But it's a small family business, but they're wonderful. And again, sweet106bakery.com. Again, the discount code is MARKT. That is a taste experience you will just be crazy for. So
Gooey,
between
yummy.
here's what you do. You order the baked goods and the coffee and have yourself an afternoon. That's what I say. Quickly, Albert, do I have to get to comments or I don't know. I don't want to.
Yeah, we have a couple that we need to
And
do.
now, your comments.
Mark thought he was wrong one time. but he was wrong. Thank you, Greg Declan. A big shout out to you.
Big shout out.
Yeah, thank you for the super chat. And Dan Silva, thank you for the super chat too, my friend. Could the Rod of Equity and Mercy have a Super Bowl theme on Friday? Oh, yeah. Tomorrow, Richard Delamater, thank you for reminding me. I'll need you, Albert, to remind me for tomorrow. I'll have to have a Super Bowl Rod of Equity and Mercy, please. Joy Branson. Yeah, go for that. Joy Branson says this, in memory of my mom, Ethel Lundgren, who passed last month at the age of 94. Wow.
I'm sorry, Joy.
That is so sad, but so wonderful at 94. But yeah, it's always so sad. I don't care how old someone is. We listen to your show on KGO and here while hanging out in our backyard. She's still listening. Oh, that's so sweet.
Thank you, Joy.
My heart breaks for you, Joy, but thank you for that.
Thank you, Ethel.
Yeah. Ethel Lundgren, rest in peace. Wow.
Yeah.
And Richard Delamater says, remember, they hate you as much as you hate them. So now what? You must let them speak so that we can communicate and claw our way out of this mess. Thank you, Richard, for the $5 super chat. And I will say this, that
big shout out.
Maybe that relates to having the conservative economist on yesterday, which I took a ration of grief for. And maybe I deserved a ration of grief. I don't know. I always, I don't just say, I tried to explain it as best I could. Anything else?
No, I think that about wraps it up.
Bush Sr. took office with 5.4% unemployment. Left it for Clinton at 7.3, for Clinton at 7.3, who left it for Bush back down at 4.2, who left it for Obama back up at 7.8, who left for Trump at 4.7. Trump then left it at 6.4% for Biden, who gave it back to Trump at 4%. And 11 months later, it's now 4.6%.
Yeah, there are fewer jobs open right now. So if you were looking for a job, there's less to go around.
And the point of Agolf laying that out is, hey, the Democrats, they clean up the economy. The Republicans mess up the economy just even by unemployment. You can look at the debt also. You can look at a lot of different indices on this. And then administration after administration, Republican administrations run the economy into the side of a mountain. The Democrats have to sweep it up. Now, you can say, hey, Mark, that overstates it. Maybe. But, I mean, that's kind of what those statistics prove out. So, anyway, I'd love to hang out. Kim is demanding that we wrap up.
Me.
No, I mean, I don't know why you...
I blame you.
Too glad the Mark Thompson Show didn't have a Radio Row Super Bowl moment. You're right, Pietro, thank you. Why didn't I... Somebody on the show has to take that initiative to make that happen.
I could just produce the show outside, like at the Ferry Building or something. Just my radio row.
Albert would have loved that. Yeah, because, it's right in the Bay Area. It would have been easy. A lot of our...
Chinatown had a couple events. There's a couple events in the South Bay. It's all over the Bay Area. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Except for our Niners not being there. So.
Yeah, that's a sad fact. Well,
also happy that everybody's being exposed to that power plant that controversially is being blamed for all the 49ers injuries.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That conspiracy theory or science continues.
The science is ridiculous.
All right, we will see. Meantime,
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Kim's got the after party. Nikki's got a show tonight. They both get drunk and talk about the news. I don't know. It's good. I enjoy it, so you should check it out. Till tomorrow, everybody. Thanks, and bye-bye.